Here I'll show how to use a template that I've created to construct box plots for a few sets of data. The data that I'm going to be using again comes from the Bureau of Transportation Statistics. It has information on flights from Atlanta to Salt Lake City and during the month of September 2011. The three variables that I'm going to analyze are these: scheduled elapsed time, in other words, how long the flight was supposed to take, the actual elapsed time, and then how many minutes late the flight actually was compared to its scheduled arrival time. And a negative number here means that it was early. So, as I said, I'm going to do a box plot. There is nothing that is built into Excel to create box plots. So I've created a template that allows users to paste data into the template to create box plots for up to 4 variables, and in its current state it will do up to 500 observations per variable. So the name of the file is called Multiple Box Plots. There are 2 worksheets, one called Intro and one called Boxplot. Let me go to the intro sheet for just a minute to note where this file can be downloaded, and again to emphasize some of the limitations. So I'm zooming here a little bit. This last portion shows where you can download the file. So it's on my website. This is the URL, and you can go there and get the file. As I said, it's limited to 500 data points. There are up to 4 variables. This is not perfect by any means, but it's a way to do it that doesn't require any kind of macro, and it does a reasonably good job for the 4 variables or fewer. So I'm going to go back to the box plot sheet, and in its current state there's some sample data, and a couple the corresponding box plots are shown, and some summary statistics related to the minimum number, the first quartile, the median, the third quartile, and the maximum for the variables in question. So I am going to use this template to create box plots for the 3 variables I just mentioned. I'm going to go back to the sheet where I started. Here are my variables. I'm going to just, I'm already in cell A1. I'm going to do Control-Shift right arrow to move to the right, and then Control-Shift down arrow to highlight all the way to the bottom. Now I've highlighted all the data for those variables. I'm going to use Control-C to copy. Go to the Multiple Box Plots workbook. Click in A1. And the safest thing here is to paste the values rather than to just do a paste, in case the workbook that you're pasting from happens to have formulas. So I'm on the Home ribbon, and I'll use this drop-down box to choose Paste, and then I'll use the first Paste Values option here. So you can see that it is we now have these 3 variables that I pasted over. I'm going to make them wide enough to show the labels. And the box plots have been drawn, although right now the legend is not big enough to display which one is for which variable. So I'm going to change the size of this plot a little bit. And now it is almost big enough. I'm going to actually do a couple of other things. First of all, this 4th column didn't get used with my data set, so I'm going to click on the word sample 4 and then just hit the delete key, and that will get rid of that variable. So what's left are the box plots for the 3 variables that I'm interested in. The legend now is the right size to display the names of the 3. Just as a reminder of what the box plot shows, let me start with the box. So this part in the middle is called the box, and then we have whiskers, and then in some cases, as in this top one, there are some outliers. In this case, the open circles are referred to as mild outliers. These filled in circles are referred to as extreme outliers. So you can see down here for the scheduled elapsed time, there are no outliers, just the box and the whiskers. In this case, the data sets have a fairly large range between the three of them, and that makes the box quite narrow looking here. We could change the scale a little bit to zoom in on a particular one, but I won't worry about that. So, as I said, this is the box. The first line here is the first quartile. So if we were to follow that down and we had a more refined scale, we'd be able to see what that value is, although we can see it up here that it's negative 16 minutes. The next line down, the one in the middle, is the median. That value is negative 7.5 for this variable. And then the rightmost part of the box is the third quartile, so in this case it's 2 minutes. So what that means, for example, on the 2 minutes is that 75% of the flights were at most 2 minutes late. 25% of them were later than 2 minutes. Then we have the whiskers, and the point at which the whiskers ends depends on whether or not there are outliers. So this one shows that on the left-hand side that there are no outliers to the left, and that means then that the end of this whisker is equal to the minimum number in the data set, which happens to be negative 37. Now, on the right-hand side, we have several outliers, and the most extreme of those outliers is the maximum number in the data set. So in this case, 221 is the maximum. The length of the whisker here is equal to the maximum number in the data set that is not considered to be an outlier. And let me just quickly say about the outliers. A mild outlier, I'm going to talk just about the positive side. It would be similar for the negative side, but for the positive side, the mild outliers are those whose values are bigger than the third quartile plus 1.5 times the interquartile range, where the interquartile range is the distance between the third and the first quartile. So in this example, the third quartile was 2. The first quartile was negative 16, so the interquartile range is 18. If we multiply that number by 1.5, then we get 27. And if we add that to 2, we have 29. So these mild outliers are numbers that are beyond 29 until we get to the place where the extreme outliers begin. And the extreme outliers start when the observation is larger than the third quartile plus 3 interquartile ranges. So again, the interquartile range here is 18, 2 minus a negative 16. If we multiply that by 3, we have 54. And if we add that to the third quartile, 2, we have 56. So these extreme outliers are those that are bigger than 56. So this first one, if I put the cursor over it, shows that it is 57, and so on. So we have, in the case of the actual elapsed time, we have one mild outlier, and it happens to be at 267. And then we have one extreme outlier way out here, which is the maximum number in that particular data set. And as we said, there are no outliers associated with the scheduled elapsed time. Now, one other thing that I'll do is that I would like to say get this to be on my original workbook, the one that I started with. So I can do that. You might be tempted to do that by copying and pasting some things from the worksheet. That has the potential to cause problems because there's a lot of hidden data, or I should say hidden computations between columns N and AQ up here. I've hidden those so that they don't clutter the worksheet. But if we were to just copy and paste some data along with the graph, we might lose something important. So rather than copying and pasting values from the worksheet, I am going to copy the entire worksheet and put it into my original workbook that had the data in it. So I do that by coming down here. There are a few ways to do it, but my favorite way is to do the following. I come down to the name of the worksheet. In this case it's called Boxplot, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose Move or Copy. So I would then have this dialog box. The first thing is to say where, in other words, what workbook do I want to put this sheet that I'm going to either move or copy. I'm going to choose to put it back where my original data were. So I'm going to click on Atlanta to Salt Lake City Descriptive Stats. That's what my data file was called. And then it says where on the sheet would you like it to go. So you want to put it before your data sheet. I had a sheet in that workbook called Descriptive Stats, so I could put it between data and descriptive stats, or I can move it to the end of the workbook. So I'm going to choose to move it to the end, and I'm going to say create a copy, and I say OK. And now I'm back on my the workbook that I started with. You can see that here's the data tab where I started. Here's the descriptive stats worksheet that we haven't looked at in this video, but is part of the workbook. And finally, the box plot came in as the last worksheet in the workbook. So that is all on Boxplots. Again, it's somewhat limited, but better than some of the other options I've seen for Boxplots in Excel.